Blog Talk Radio.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and welcome to another Thursday evening live here on the blogtalkradio.com network. And I apologize, the opening music, if you will, seemed to have a little bit of sickness tonight or something. I don't know what was going on there, but it didn't seem to be coming out too well. But I'm glad you joined me anyways, and I appreciate you coming back each and every week and sharing with me on the Thursday night programs here on Golf Talk Live. Got a great show for you tonight. Very, very excited, actually. This is, as I've been sort of leading up here in previous weeks, this is the first evening for 2016 that we're going to have the Coach's Corner panel back, and we've got one of them waiting in the wings here, just waiting for the other one. Hopefully everything's going to be okay tonight. Tim Kremer is on the line with me here, and hopefully joining us very, very shortly is going to be Michele Trimarche. But before I bring Tim on and Michele, I just want to remind everybody, as I said, we are live every Thursday night from 6 to 8 p.m. Central. We're only going to have an hour show tonight. I'm not going to have a guest following the Coach's Corner tonight. I decided not to have one, being that this was the first panel discussion that we're going to have for the new year. And but next week, of course, after Coach's Corner, I will have some guests the weeks following. But this week I decided to cut it a little bit shorter. Always glad that you can join me. If you're looking to find us, obviously if you're here, you know where we are. But for those of you who are not sure, go to blogtalkradio.com and up in the search key type Golf Talk Live, and that will take you to the main page for the program. And always during the live broadcast on Thursday night, the current show, the current broadcast, if you will, is always at the top of the page. And for some reason, if you're not able to join us during the live broadcast, just go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live and scroll down to the on-demand section, and all of the programs, of course, are auto-recorded. So if you miss us during the live broadcast, not a problem. You can go back and listen to any of the previously aired shows when it's convenient for you. You can also get the show on iTunes at itunes.com. Go to the podcast section. Again, type Golf Talk Live, and that will take you there to all of the shows as well. And it's also available at Stitcher.com, so make sure that you go to either of those if you're not joining us here. And as most of you know, I'm all over social media on Facebook and Twitter. Go to Facebook.com/Golf Talk Live blog. Make sure you have blog on there. Keep the show regularly updated there each and every week, as well as many, many of the golf groups in there. Of course, I post through pretty much all of the golf groups through Facebook as well, just to keep everybody updated. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO, and that's CEO in capital letters for those of it that want to follow me on Twitter. And thank you for some of the recent followers here in the past few weeks. So remember to tune in every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. That's 7 to 9 p.m. On Eastern Standard, and 4 to 6 for those of you in Pacific Time. And normally what we do this time of year, when I bring back the Coach's Corner panel, the first hour, of course, is the panel discussion. And then normally, except for this evening, I normally have a guest that follows the second hour. But tonight we're just going to have the Coach's Corner panel. As I mentioned, I have two guests on tonight. One's here with me right now, so I'm going to bring him out here and not keep him waiting any longer. His name, of course, is Tim Kremer. He has been on the show a number of times, both as a guest and also on some of our panel discussions. And he is the president and founder of Spirit of Golf LLC. He's a visionary peak performance coach and consultant based out of Stuart, Florida, and really has an innovative and pioneering mind-body coaching technique program that really allows not just the athletes but also non-athletes access their peak mind states for greater success and joy in both life and golf life as well. And he's also just wanted to mention here tonight as well that he is also the peak performance mind coach for Club Med Academies as well. That's also another position that he carries. So, Tim, welcome to Golf Tack Live.
Thanks, Ted. Thanks for having me.
I'm always glad to have you. And as I mentioned, Michele hopefully is going to be joining us here shortly. I'm hoping there's not a problem. And otherwise, as I said to you off air, it'll be you and I tonight for the next hour.
I'm sure we will find a way to fill up the hour.
Yeah, I'm quite certain. If you don't, I know I will. So, but Tim, let me just do this. Since I just mentioned that you've got a new position to add under your cap. Let's just take this opportunity while we wait to see if Michelle's going to be joining us here in the next few minutes to give you an opportunity to talk about this new position with Club Med, explain how this sort of came about and what's going to be involved in it.
Yeah, well, what happened, Ted, was I was asked to come in. Club Med Academies is actually it's an academy program for juniors throughout the world. Most of our golf students actually are international students who come to the United States. They're educated at the academies, and then we also have a golf program where they play and practice 6 days a week. And so they really are coming in to groom themselves. Well, certainly for college scholarships, but also a lot of them will go on to attempt to play professionally. So Club Med was interested in bringing me in for the golf academy. And once they kind of got to know me, they've also got a tennis academy there, which is actually a bigger academy, and a volleyball academy. And so they recognized very quickly that the mind skills that I coach are as applicable to athletes in any sport as much as golf. And so I have the privilege of just working with a lot of really, really talented young athletes, very physically gifted in many ways, but minds that are kind of bouncing all over the place in many cases. And so that's what I really am in there to do, is just help them with their focusing skills, but also their emotional management skills, which I think, as you know, is kind of my specialty, is the emotional management stuff.
Yeah, and that's something, and that's we're going to get into the conversation here in just a few moments. As I said, I'm going to give a few more moments here to see if Michele is going to. Sure. And I suspect probably what's happened is, as we were talking off the air, I certainly understand that a lot of you professionals have a day job, and sometimes things run a little bit longer than anticipated. So that obviously takes first priority. So sometimes I understand people can be late, and sometimes they are unable to show up at all. So certainly I don't harbor any ill will towards Michele if that is the case. So we'll just proceed as we see that we need to here.
Well, and I guess I'm interrupting a little here, but it's really not a lot different than the ball that goes in the rough or in the bunker or whatever. Right. You just learn to deal with it, and if we can't deal with it effectively, if it's throwing us off, then we're in big trouble. And so it really does move into that acceptance that, just an acceptance that if this is the way it is, this is the way it is. It's a great opportunity for any of us to just stay, stable and move on. And so it happens whether it's on the golf course or not on the golf course.
Exactly. Well said. All right, let's do this, Tim. As I mentioned again a little bit to you off air, what I wanted to cover tonight, being that it's early in the year. I mean, here we are. We're March 3rd. We're moving very quickly, very rapidly, actually, into spring. And even though it really, throughout the U.S., it really has not been what we would classify as a traditionally hard winter. Of course, there has been, the odd storm here over the last month or so that's come through in certain areas. But really, if you look at it, it's been quite warm and quite mild through even some of the northeastern states for quite a while. So a lot of people didn't really go into hibernation mode, if you will, that they traditionally do in the winter months. So people are either maybe have already been playing golf or certainly thinking about golf and looking to get out there. Sure. So this is what I want to talk about really tonight. And I guess until Michele either comes in or I'll just pick it up, I'm going to talk a little bit about the physical aspects of the game, but I also want to talk about how our thoughts, feelings, and emotions affect not only off the golf course, but also on the golf course. So the first question I want you to answer for me, Tim, if you will, and just maybe talk a little bit about with the audience, is first off, what is energy, and how do we tap into that energy to really affect us on and off the golf course. Just give sort of a brief description, really, what our core energy is, and how it can help us out in the golf course.
Yeah, it's a great question. In some ways, it's an interesting question and one that's a little bit slippery to define. But the way I look at energy is I look at energy in terms of our emotions, or maybe it's that sense of beingness that we all have inside of us, that some would define as consciousness itself, but it's just that knowing that we kind of all exist on some level. And I guess that what we know now, even scientifically, is in the big shift, of course, is that everything in the universe now is energy. And so it's our ability to tap into that energy that really defines our internal sense of power. It's a slippery slope, but that's maybe the best explanation that I have of what energy is.
Right.
Emotion is certainly energy. In fact, we say that emotion is energy in motion, and it's what we feel inside of the body. And so it's if you took a cell, for example, the cells of the body literally vibrate at different frequencies based upon whether we're happy or sad, and that's why happiness feels very different inside the body, in the cells of the body, the muscles and the joints, than does anger and frustration. So it really is just energy bouncing around inside of the body, I guess, is the best explanation I've got.
Right, and that's beautifully said. And the reason why I wanted to ask you that question, one, I knew you would know the answer, but also I think a lot of people, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that here in just a moment, but a lot of people really misunderstand and confuse really what some of the components of golf and being able to play good golf. They assume it's always about the swing and it's always about the mechanics.
Sure.
And that's where they spend
Sure.
probably 90% of their effort. And I think this is why so many amateurs struggle, is because there's a lot more to golf. I mean, if you think about some of the best players that have ever played this game, like Nicklaus, and I use him as an example because he's probably one of the best examples in the past, that really tapped into their inner energy and really their focus and their emotion, and used that emotion to his advantage when he went around the golf course. And that doesn't mean that he was, whipping clubs. I don't mean that kind of emotion, but he tapped into that emotion and was able to, even in situations where maybe things didn't go his way, he was able to use the emotions that he conjured up to be able to help him recover and get back into the game, if you will. And a lot of people misunderstand that ability and that effect and how important that is to their golf game. So let me just talk about a couple of things on the physical side, and then I've got another question that's going to pertain specifically to that area that I want you to get into a little more depth, if you will. One of the questions I had for Michele, of course, was really to give us some tips about how to sort of loosen up for the season, for those that, as I said, that maybe did do a little hibernation this winter. One of the biggest mistakes that I've seen over the years with some of the corporate types, particularly that I've worked with over the years, is they tend to, especially up in the Northeast, they push the golf clubs aside. They don't get out there and they don't really do too much activities. They're just sort of sitting there at their desk at work, or they're sitting there, in that comfy chair at home in front of the television, certainly watching the Golf Channel or listening to other programs, but they're not engaging a lot of their muscles. And what ends up happening is a lot of these muscles tighten up and constrict and just don't get a lot of use. So what I always suggest people do is, if you're not going to get out there and swing a golf club, there's a lot of different very simple exercises that we've talked about here in the show before that you can do. A very simple one is standing behind a chair or something with a fairly high back, resting your hands on there and just twisting your core, keeping your feet, of course, about shoulder width apart, which you would normally have for some of your golf stance, and just sort of rotate your body to the left as far as you can go comfortably without putting too much stress on the body, and then back to the right. And the reason why I say doing exercises like that is you want to be able to loosen up those muscles, because, as I said, the biggest mistake that I see, Tim, with a lot of golfers out there that have been sitting in the wings for a few months, is they get out there and start swinging clubs without really loosening up first, for a little bit, and that's when the injuries start. And the worst thing you can ever happen is, with those injuries right from the get-go in the season, it kind of dictates what's going to happen later on. And so there's a lot of great exercise you can do, and certainly if you belong to a gym, There's a lot of exercise that you can do in there, a lot of equipment that you can use. But I strongly suggest that you connect with a certified fitness instructor, and particularly somebody in the golf industry right now. There's a lot of them out there that are golf professionals that are also certified fitness instructors. I strongly suggest if you want to get tuned up for this year, this upcoming season, that you contact your local golf professional, and if he or she is not certified, most of them have somebody that they know that is certified and can help you with golf-specific drills and tips that can help you get ready for the season. So that's what I would strongly suggest. It depends on where you are and what you want to do and the abilities that you want, but that's what I suggest that people do before you get out there and start playing your rounds and start swinging golf clubs, because that's going to reduce the amounts of injuries right from the get-go. And I think that that's really for seasoned golfers, and particularly for you high handicapper amateur golfers out there. You need to be looking at doing stuff like that before you get out there and playing around. Tim, I want to get back to you, as I said here a moment ago, and I want you to tackle this next issue. And one of the things that a lot of golfers, and we see this, and I want you to address this from both angles. I want you to address it, and you can start either way, however you want to do it, from an amateur level and also from a professional level, because I know you've dealt with both. What we tell ourselves out in the golf course, does it really matter? And if so, why?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question. I will get to that, but I would like to just kind of concur with what you said about moving and stretching and whatever. The thing that I like to add to that, though, Ted, is that as we're doing those movements, and here's where I guess I think the missing component is, we can do that with a smile on our face and make it fun, and we can make it we can make that exercising and that movement and that twisting, we can make that an enjoyable process, or we can do it with a lot of oomping and grinding and making it hard, and that's really, to me, it introduces more tension into the body, and that's what I strongly encourage athletes not to do, is to add that kind of energy. And the way we do that is really through the emotions. For example, the body does not inherently tense up by itself. The only way for the body to tense up is for what I like to say, bogus thinking, bogus thoughts and emotions that are going through the mind that send kind of bogus stories into the muscles and joints in the body. They do tense up, and they lock up in states of tension and resistance. So in a way, working out is not a lot different than swinging a golf club, in that we can either do it with a mindset of flow and ease, or we can do it with the mindset of tension and resistance, and that purely is a mental and emotional state of mind.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. And I guess the reason why I raised the points that I did is I think that a lot of people don't realize not only the importance of being physically active, but they tend to think, well, I'm going to the gym 2-3 days a week, or whatever their regimen is. Especially for men. And I'm going to single out guys here because this is very typical for guys. Girls are, I think, women are a little bit different. But the guys traditionally go out and they get the weights, and they're lifting the weights, and that's great to keep you toned and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. But
they're not golf-specific exercises. There's a lot of exercises out there, and obviously we can't show them here on the air, but. That's why I strongly recommend that people get in touch with a certified fitness instructor that specializes. Yeah,
and I love that too. Absolutely.
Yeah, in golf fitness exercises, because golf does utilize certainly the big muscles, which we want to keep in shape, but there's a lot of stabilizing muscles and a lot of other core muscles that don't always get used in certain things, but they definitely do get used in golf. And you want to make sure that you're utilizing them effectively if you want to get the maximum benefit from it. So that's why I say that there's specific golf exercises out there that you can do, drills and so forth. And that's why I think if you're going to do it right. It's worth the investment, it's worth the time, and it's worth the financial investment to connect with them. And there's a ton of them out there. And as I said earlier as well, many of the traditional golf professionals like myself are starting to add that to their repertoire because they're seeing a big need for it, and the ones that maybe have not gone for those certifications are partnering up with somebody who is specifically certified in that area. So that's a great way to sort of kill two birds with one stone. You get some great tips on your golf game and as far as the mechanics of the swing, but you can also get some great tips and training, if you will, to keep yourself in tune physically to be able to help your golf game as well. But let's talk about, and I want you to get a little more specific, if you will, with respect to what we tell ourselves, because a lot of times we get out in the golf course, and let's differentiate what the professionals are, what are some of the thought processes that the professionals are dealing with while they're out on tour or playing in some of their rounds, and then what are some of the thoughts that the amateur is dealing with, and how do they differ from one another, and why do they differ?
Yeah, it's a great question, and by and large, I think that if I was to just generalize a statement, I do think that professionals, at least at the but now really professionals at the what I would say the SymmetraWeb.com PGA and LPGA tours, when we get down to the mini tours, by and large there is a lot of self-talk that is very, very, very unproductive. And I would say as we move up the tour ranks, certainly that self-talk becomes more productive, which to me is everything. Amateurs in general, what I see, the one quality that I see that I think does not serve people well is what I call explainers. And it's almost like they feel after every shot they just need to tell somebody what happened, what went wrong, and it's just like this constant mind chatter that really does them no good. And the funny thing is, Ted, as you know too, is that nobody really wants to hear it. Even your best buddies are like, they're like, hey, Mike, great, but I really don't care. But it is a funny sport in that we just think we have to explain and justify and rationalize everything, and you don't see tour players really doing that often. If they do, they might do it a little bit with their caddies, but to me it's a huge energy leak that we really don't. And by an energy leak, what I mean by that is it's no different than if you had a tank full of gasoline in your car and you just took a cup and you filled up the cup with the gasoline and you just threw it off to the side of the road. That would be an energy leak. And really we do that with our emotions too, in that every time we explain or every time we get really upset or whatever, we're just wasting energy that we could be, kind of channeling positively into our games. So that is the huge difference that I see between most amateurs, between, say, the average amateur and not the champion amateur, and tour players. That'd be one of the big differences. But getting back to that question, it's one of the things that when I do group events, and I do travel the country and do events at a lot of private clubs and things like that, but one of the first questions I always ask is, why does the body move the way it does? Why when we swing a club? Why when we swing a club? Why does the body move the way it does? And invariably it comes to, well, the mind. The mind sends it instructions, and of course it does. But then I ask, well, why does the mind then, or why does the body move either in a state of ease and flow, which it loves to do, or does it get tense and resistance? And really, this is what I think is the missing link, and maybe a good reason to have this as one of the first shows of the year. But what we miss out on is that really the body moves in direct response to our emotional frame of mind. It moves, it correlates to our mood. So that we're in a good mood, which is something that we have to get better at managing. The body really does cooperate very efficiently and very effectively. When we are in a bad mood, there's absolutely no way for the body to move in states of flow and ease, and everything we've practiced kind of goes right out the window if we're not careful. So we can have a fabulous, fabulous golf swing, but as you know, when the emotions are out of control, or we're super nervous, or we're angry, or we're uptight, or whatever, our ability even to sense in the body how we want it to move, it's no good.
It's interesting that you say, and I'm going to give you a few examples, and I know that you'll know this and understand where I'm coming from, but just to give you a few examples of exactly what you were just talking about, how your emotions sort of come into play. I remember back in, and I'll tackle the professional side first. Back a few years ago when Phil Mickelson's wife was battling with some cancer issues.
Yes.
It was very easy to see. Now, obviously he is a consummate professional and able to handle himself very well in the course. But I truly believe that his mind, part of his mind, was not on the golf course. It was back, home with his wife and thinking about what she was going through, even if it was on a subconscious level. And that has to affect his performance. And for a while there, he kind of fell off the radar a little bit. And again, certainly played some phenomenal golf compared to the average high handicapper out there. But it wasn't up to Phil Mickelson's best. And I truly believe that was an impact. Go back
it would
a
have
little bit.
To be. It would have to be because the emotions determine. Again, the emotions are the front runner to the thoughts we think. And it begs the question too that when a song pops in your head, did you choose a song or did it just pop in your head? And the answer, of course, is, well, it just kind of popped in my head. Then we go to, well, why did the song pop in your head when it did? And the answer every time is when you're in a good mood, happy songs are going to pop in your head. Yep. When you're in a bad mood, then, Love Gone Wrong songs are going to pop in or whatever. and the point being, absolutely right. I mean, and I don't know what his state of mind was, but I would agree. There were some things that appeared to be off. And, of course, we never really know. And I don't want to sound like one of those broadcasters who's just saying, well, he has to be feeling this way. I guess I really never know how they're feeling. But with that being said, just on an energy level, there is no doubt that when we are not in a good mood, the thoughts that we have access to, and that's the way that I like to look at it. It's not that we're deliberately choosing the thoughts, but the thoughts that we have access to in any mood is a reflection of the mood. And so you want positive thoughts. You better be in a good mood, because otherwise you're in a bad mood. You're not even going to have access to them.
Yeah.
Or to good decisions.
Right. And another way, Tim, that I think there's sort of the differential, if you will, between the amateur and the professional is professionals have learned to be able to handle their emotions. And I'll give you a good example, then I'll show you on the amateur side where they fail at this. Most professionals, if they have a bad round or a bad hole, are able to, I won't say block it out, but they're able to understand what went wrong, or at the very least, they will move it aside and deal with it after the round out on the range or in a different forum. They're able to compartmentalize. They rechannel
very quickly.
Exactly, rechannel very quickly. What happens to most amateurs, and I feel, and I'm sure you've seen this many, many times in your dealings, is they will look at, the last couple of times that they were out, or maybe even last season. Maybe they didn't finish so strong and they had a lot of issues with their golf game. That now creeps into 2016, right before they've even gotten to the first tee or the driving range or practice tee. And already they're playing in that mental Rolodex, all of those emotions from last year, all the baggage that they carried. They're not able to rechannel, as you say, do that. So in your estimation, based on what you're doing in some of your coaching and teaching, what are some techniques or what are some things that you're helping the students that you're working with to be able to do that more effectively, to be able to handle their emotions? What specifically do you do with them?
Yeah, well, first of all, it comes with an understanding of what we call the present moment, the here and now, the now, one shot at a time, whatever we want to call it. The old timers always used to call it, one shot at a time. I guess the buzzword now is they're in the now. And I love that, because when we're in the now, our concept, our ability to stay focused in the present moment, in the process, is what's really important. Now, one of the gifts I think that I bring to the students that I coach is had a meditation practice for about 25 years, and that's really what we do in meditation is we just keep bringing it into the now. And the reality is you can't be immersed in the now and focused on past or future in the same moment in time. And when you think about it, every time something comes into our field of awareness that doesn't feel good, we're dragging up the past. Now, the past doesn't really exist other than in memory, but we're still remembering it right now. And when we get anxious about the future, we're way off in the weeds already. So the solution always is bringing it back into the now, which is where all of our power is at, our ability to just get into the process, stay committed, and keep our energy and our emotions in the now. Because, if we can't do that, if we can't learn to do that, we are going to be off in the weeds because we're always going to be off in past or future. So that really is the training in a nutshell. And now that's, in many cases, easier said than done because we've been used to just letting our minds go crazy for how many, weeks, months, years, decades, half decades for some bit, and so that makes perfect sense. But the ability to stay in the now and not drag in the past is huge, but also not to get too far out in front of ourselves. One of my academy students on the golf team, for example, he's playing really well right now, and he came up to me the other day. His dad was there, and he said, I really feel like I'm going to win this weekend. And he tends to get a little dramatic, which is fine, but and I was like, Jeffrey, I said, that's great, and I love it that you want to win, but I said, to me, the way you're going to win is you're going to take care of a lot of now moments, and you're going to take care of a lot of shots, one at a time, and then you'll add them up, and the winning will just take care of itself. Because if you get too far out in the future with the winning, and all of a sudden you got about 2 or 3 bogeys under your belt, where do you think your mind's going to go? Oh, crap, this goal, probably not going to win now. So you're already off in the weeds. And so really we just keep bringing it back to this shot, this shot, this shot. It sounds simplistic. Maybe sometimes it sounds boring. Maybe it even, I don't know how it sounds, but that's where the action's at, is when you take care of this shot and this shot only. It's the best shot you got at the end of the day of putting together some great results.
Right, exactly. Well said. And again, the reason why that I wanted to bring this, sort of fruition for the first show of the season on the Coach's Corner panel is I really wanted for people to understand that it's not all just about going to the driving range and hitting golf balls. There's a lot of other things that need to be, if you're going through difficulties with work, stresses at work, and things like that, it's going to creep into your golf game. So you need to be aware of that. You need to be conscious of what's going on in your environment around you, not just how you're hitting it at the driving range or how you've played it on the golf course. There are other factors involved, and your emotions play a key thing. And I think that I think people are starting to slowly, certainly the professionals are, and that's why there's so many sports psychologists and that available to them now, but and peak performance coaches. But for the average high handicapper out there, they don't have that arsenal available to them, so they have to find other ways to be able to channel that. And I think this is why I wanted to bring this discussion tonight, and we're going to have other discussions as we go on through the year about this area again, because it's not just something you can wrap up in 40 minutes to an hour. There's a lot of other components.
Right.
We don't have time to get into all of them tonight, but I'm certainly going to have you back in throughout the season and talk about some key things, and we'll have some specific dialogue on what we want them to do. We're going to talk a little bit about that here in a few moments as well to start things off for the year. But I want to just jump back very quickly, if I can, Tim, just to sort of the physical side of the game as well. I looked at golf this way, and I've watched a lot of players, and I'm referring to professional players, and I watched really how they sort of methodically work their way around the golf course. And I've narrowed it down really to 4 factors. And it's position, it's the approach, it's recovery, and it's scoring. And if you think about it, every hole that you play, from the first tee to the 18th hole, the first thing that any professional will do is they will look for the best position to place themselves off the tee. That's the first thing that they'll do, depending on what hole, whether it's a par 3, par 4, par 5. Again, depending on the circumstance, like to give you an example, if you had an overly long par 5 that the player knew based on their abilities that they couldn't reach into, the formula may be position, approach, and then score. In a traditional hole, it may be position, it may be approach, score, or it could be recovery. And the reason why I have those 4 factors and why I labeled it that way is because a lot of times you might be in a situation where you've hit an errant tee shot. Well, it may not be conducive to approach your target, even if you're within striking distance, because of a bad lie. So now you have to switch to what I call recovery mode. So how do I put myself back in the optimal position to be able to now then go for that approach shot? And a lot of people end up focusing on all of the other things that we've talked about here tonight. You know, they're focusing on the physical parts that they're focusing on are the swing mechanics and and that sort of thing. And really, it can be watered down to a very simple thing. Now, obviously, emotions and all that comes into play. If you've hit a bad shot emotionally, that's going to affect you, and that has to be something that you work on as well. But there are really those 4 factors dictate what's going to happen on each hole and how you recover and how you score. Because if you don't have those components in play, then you're not going to score. Right. And
now the one thing I would add to that, though, however, is that say your decision for the position, even on the tee, is really going to be set up by the mood that you're in.
Sure.
So if you're not in a good mood, for example, you're going to look out there maybe with fear, as opposed to when you're already in the zone, which is an emotional state of mind. Your ability to pick a target is very different. So this is where, again, I feel that, and I love what you're saying. What you're saying, though, to me, is you're defining mental processes rather than emotional processes, which I believe set up the mental processing. So even and the analogy that I always give with my students too is that your frame of mind, your mood, is going to determine how, when you walk up to a ball that's in a divot or it's plugged in the bunker or whatever, it's your emotions that are going to set up what's about to happen. Because in the one scenario, you're going to think more clearly, you're going to make better decisions, you're going to see possibilities. In the second, it's like, here we go. I can't tell you how many times. Here we go again. It always happens to me. I always get the bad breaks. Now, all of that is really set up before you ever get to the ball by the frame of mind you're already in. So, to me, the professionals are the ones who that stuff just rolls off them because they just see they're better at seeing possibilities. Not all of them. And we certainly see the meltdowns and the hissy fits even at tour level every week. But so I love what you're saying, but to me the first cause even of that is the emotions.
Right. And just to add to that as well, and you're 100% right. One of the interesting things, and I like I said, I really took a hard look at this because I found something very interesting. And again, this is not, I'm not saying it can't happen at the tour level, but very rarely would it happen. But it happens a lot more than you think, and I'm going to explain here in just a second, at the amateur level. And that is that the 4 factors that I just referenced sometimes get put in the wrong context. And I'll give you an example.
Sure.
A lot of players, again, if they are thinking mentally that they're going to fail off that first tee, for instance, if they think, well, I'm going to hit a big old slice or I'm going to hit it they see the trouble, right away, instead of thinking position, they're already in recovery mode. How am I going to recover? So they've already set themselves emotionally up to fail right off from the get-go. And this is why it's so important to keep your emotions in check. And this is why, as you've pointed out many times tonight already, that this is what really differentiates the professionals from the amateurs, is they have found a way to be able to harness those emotions and channel them in such a way that even if they've had a bad hole or two and strung together, they're able to rechannel themselves back into that positive mindset to be able to set up for in the now shot what they're dealing now, not what happened 2-3 shots ago or 2-3 holes ago. They're in the now, and they're able to get back and say, okay, I need to get into position to be able to do this, and that's what I'm trying to get at, and that's why I think it's so important that we understand that.
Rarely do you see a tour professional follow up a bad shot with another bad shot.
Right.
Rarely.
But
And not that we don't, but rarely do we, because there just seems to be a level of whatever there that they're not going to, it's just, and it happens from time to time, but rarely do we.
Right. But you know exactly what I'm talking about, though. I mean, how many times have we seen, and you can tell, especially, if you go up to any of your local golf courses, and you go to that, especially the first tee, because everybody, even the pros admit, they're all a little bit nervous on the first tee. It's understandable. You got, a crowd there and whatnot, and you've maybe got 2 or 3 golf carts slung in behind you waiting for their turn. So, there's a little bit of anxiety that takes in root. But right away, you can see the proverbial wheel in motion. They're already setting themselves up for failure, because the first thing out of their mouths is thinking, God, I hope I don't hit it over in the rough, or I hope I don't hit it in that bunker up there. So right away, they're thinking recovery as opposed to where do I need to be to give myself the best chance to hit my next shot, and so on and so forth. And
absolutely, yeah. And in my world, what we call that is you're either focused on wanted or unwanted, and you will get whatever you're focused upon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you either are. I mean, but do you know the difference? And a lot of times they don't know the difference. It's like what they'll be giving lip service to middle of the fairway, but what they're energizing emotionally is, oh no, I'm in big trouble. And that's where we tend to get what we're emotionalizing and not what we're thinking.
Yeah, and I'll even go as far to say, obviously on a par 3, they might even throw up approach in their mind at first, but I've even seen players, especially amateur players, where they're actually thinking score off the tee. They're thinking, So they're not even thinking, let get into position, let's get focused on the shot at hand. Right. They're already thinking, okay, this is the par 4, I need to birdie this in order to keep my round going. So already they're thinking, 2 or 3 shots ahead. And obviously you have to be cognizant of what you're dealing with ahead, but at the same time, you can't be thinking score when you haven't even left the tee box yet.
I've got many tour players who are thinking about what a single golf shot in a 4-day tournament means for the tournament. So they're so far off in the future. I totally agree with what you're saying. Yeah, you're in a way you're off mentally and emotionally into something that's totally down the road and way outside your control.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one other thing I want to... Right, exactly. And that's why I wanted to bring that up tonight, because it's something that I haven't really talked about, and I'm going to get into it more, and there's a reason for it. I'm not going to get into specifics tonight, but there's a reason why I wanted to mention about those 4 factors, because I think there are things that a lot of people really don't think about. At our level, it's a little bit different because we're dealing with, and somebody might use different terminology and things like that, but essentially, if you really piece around together, those 4 factors are critical, and a lot of people don't understand that, and it works, of course, in harness with the emotional side of things, of course, but from a physical standpoint, that's really what we need to get ourselves in gel with, and that's really what the professionals do. I mean, we had Cindy and I, of course, on Tuesday we had one of the Symetra Tour players, Jessica Wallace, who is originally she is from Canada. I think she has some residence here in the United States as well, but she's out in BC. And she was talking about a second-place finish that she had just a few weeks ago on one of their first tour events. And, but the interesting thing about her is her mental focus is as such as she wasn't thinking about, well, gosh, I didn't win, or, I didn't string it ahead. She's thinking about what she can take away from that experience and then channel it into her upcoming events, what she needs to work on, what changes she needs to make. So she took, and I certainly, hey, listen, coming second place at a major tour event is certainly nothing to sneeze at. But from a tourist professional standpoint, of course, they want to win. That's their goal, is to win the tournament. But they're going to take a second or even a third if they have to. But what they're going to do is they're not going to look at that as a failure. Which many club golfers will do if they don't win their club tournament, or they're not winning in their foursome, they're in last place, what have you. They're looking at it as a failure and not taking the key components from what has happened there, and then using that as a positive to move forward. And that's where I think a lot of the players get stuck. But let me just very quickly here, and then I want to get back because there's some things that I want you to discuss here tonight while we have time. One of the other things, too, on the physical side, and I'm certainly no expert of it. I've certainly done my fair share of it. But I've had a number of guests on the show that specialize in yoga. One of them was, of course, Catherine Roberts, who most people know if you've ever watched the Golf Channel. Great young lady. Yoga has really become a big part of sports. It's not just coming into golf, but she deals with many NFL teams as well as MLB, which of course is Major League Baseball teams, that are begun to use yoga to improve their athletes' performance. And there's a lot of benefits from yoga, and I certainly am not an expert, so I'm not going to get into all this, but that is another area as well. And golf has started to jump on that bandwagon. People are starting to see the benefits that yoga does. It's a great relaxation tool, which, again, goes back to the emotional side of things, but it's also great physically because it helps with a lot of great stretching and a lot of great movements. It actually... I've talked to a number of people that specialize, including Catherine. One of the great things that yoga does is because of the movements going from one pose to the next, and with that fluidity, it is something that you can channel, if you will, into the golf swing, because it is a sequence of movements. And the more fluid you are in those movements, the more effective your swing is going to be. Like, and Tim, you know yourself, you've watched some less than stellar players out there who they're very jerky in their movements. It's not very fluid. Right. And ultimately, as you said, they're hitting in the weeds or they're hitting in the bunkers or what have you. And this is something. So, again, I'm going to defer to the experts out there, somebody like Catherine Roberts, and there's many, many others out there that I've had, and some of the names, unfortunately, I apologize, escape me at the moment, but she's certainly a prominent one in the game. This is something that you want to get involved with as well, I think, from a physical standpoint. It will definitely help. It's certainly helped my game. It's helped me feel better, number one. It's helped me stretch better. I can't enough. So, again, speak to your local teach professional. They may or may not be involved in it. Go online. As I said, Catherine Roberts is a great one. And really engage in that and learn more about it and get involved in that, because, again, yoga is something that is coming into sports at a very rapid pace. I just talked to somebody else the other day, and again, the name escapes my mind, but they're now transitioning not just in golf but into other major sports as well, because they're, again, recognizing the advantage for their athletes. So a lot of the teams at the collegiate level as well as the professional level are recognizing the benefits of using.
Very much so. Because the other thing, the other beautiful thing, several beautiful things with yoga, and I know Catherine, and she's just exceptional with what she does. But it really requires you to focus, and even to stay in a position. You have to be able to manage the breath, and you have to be able to use the breath to manage the focus. And so it's really an incredible practice. The other one that I'm very, very much in favor of is Tai Chi. I think that Tai Chi is another movement practice that really takes a high level of focus and calmness and breathing. And so I think either of those practices from a physical standpoint are just incredible for athletes in general. Absolutely. As is meditation. Meditation, because there again, that's a stopping of the resistant thoughts, and that really add to the tension and resistance in the body. So I think any three of those practices, now meditation, of course, is less physically active, but nonetheless still a huge, huge benefit to mental and emotional focus.
Now, one of the things that you talked about, and again, you're 100% right, and thank you for those thoughts. On your website, Tim, you talk about the need to tell yourselves both pre and post shot during those routines to be able to play your best golf. So let's take it obviously pre-shot, and again, we'll leave the pros out here for now. Let's, because we're here to help the amateurs tonight.
Sure.
Let's talk about what
that brings up a great point, though. Is that this is what I think a lot of people don't realize, is that, say you take an emotion of frustration, I promise you that a professional who's frustrated, that emotion of frustration is no different than what an amateur feels. Frustration is frustration no matter what level you're at. It is a human emotion. So don't think that the amateurs get more frustrated or less frustrated. I mean, if you're frustrated, you're frustrated. So we have to keep that in mind. We can't just assume that, just because your talent level, your skill level is not as high, you're going to deal with emotions. You may have trained your mind differently to not, let those emotions affect you as much. But hey, if you're feeling them, it does not matter what level you're at.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, again, it goes back to really the theme that we've been talking about here tonight, really is the emotions. It's amazing. And I think as you get older, Tim, I think, as I've, started creeping up the ladder of age, I see, and listen, we're all getting there, unfortunately, but, I was joking around the other day with somebody, and we were talking about, that old adage that, if I knew then what I know now. And
right.
When you're 20, when you're in your teens or your early 20s now, it doesn't really sink in for most people.
Right.
But as you start to get up into your, maybe your 40s, 30s, you start to become a little bit self-aware. But when you particularly start getting your 40s and 50s and beyond, you become very self-aware, and you start to understand what that really means. And
sure.
So it's just kind of interesting. Let me just before we continue on, and I'm guessing here, but I think Michele may finally be here, so let me just see if I can, I believe this is her, let me bring her on. Hi, good evening, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. Is this Michele?
Yeah, this is Michele. Hi, Ted.
Hi, how are you doing? Michele, let me just very quickly, before we continue on, let me just let everybody know, and I kind of suspect something here, and I'll mention it in a minute, but joining us with Tim and I is, of course, Michele Trimarche, who's a PGA, LPGA Class A professional. She's also a golf fitness professional, TPI certified. She's also YGF Certified Yoga golf professional, and also U.S. Kids Certified Instructor. And she's been recognized by Golf Magazine as one of the top 100 teachers in the Northeast region, and Golf for Women magazine has also recognized her as one of the top 50 teachers in the country. Michele, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now,
Appreciate
what I was going to say, not a problem. What I was going to say is I think I understand now. I wasn't sure if maybe you had been delayed with some things going on at work, but I suspect that there may have been confusion with the time because you're on Eastern time, correct?
I am in California, so
that's probably what it was.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're coming a little bit late. Hey, but that's not a big deal.
Okay.
Michele, let me. No problem. Tim, let me just pause for a second with you, and we'll get back to what we were talking about. But I want to give Michele an opportunity here. Two things. Michele, first off, I don't know if you were able to catch any of the show yet or not, but I just talked a few minutes ago about yoga, and hopefully I did it justice. And but maybe you could touch a little bit about some of the benefits of yoga and why, to especially some of the high handicap golfers out there, why they need to really seriously consider bringing yoga into their lives and how it's going to help their game.
Well, the yoga does a lot. I think it covers all aspects of the body, where a lot of the weight training is centered more on strength training. And the yoga is more flexibility, which is obviously more increasing range of motion, reducing swing faults, which is something that a lot of people lose as they get older is their flexibility. So I think a lot of people think that they need to train with the weights as opposed to combining it with flexibility. We definitely need both the strength and the flexibility. But the strength, I think, needs to come more from the isometric, just the old adage that we used to do a long time ago. It was just weight-bearing exercises,
right,
as opposed to so that you're building long, lean muscles to create more, increasing the endurance and developing the lean muscles so that you're able to move more efficiently with more fluidity as well. And then we bring in the balance, of course. As we get older, we lose that. And I think that the first thing that we're introduced when we do play golf is our feet, and a lot of
Yep.
people don't relate to that. They relate to the golf club in their hands. So if you can just get more awareness with grounding and more connected to the ground, it's amazing how the rest of the swing starts to build from there. As I always say, you want to build the foundation first so that you have the stability to create a better golf swing.
And let me just add something here too, because obviously for those that may not know about your sort of background and history, you obviously competed in other areas outside of golf. Tell a little bit about what you used to do, and you know what I'm referring to, as far as weight training and things like that. I mean, you were very competitive in that end. Explain, a little bit what you used to do, and why, compared to some of the things that you just talked about, that it may, like, for instance, I'll give you an example, and Tim and I talked about this briefly earlier when I was mentioning some different physical things. A lot of men particularly spend a lot of time in the gym with weight training, that, trying to bulk up those muscles, and that's not always conducive to playing great golf, because it's not really working on the areas. So I know you used to do a lot of physical training in that, and competing and so forth in that, which was great for what you were doing, but how does it help, or is there some areas that maybe hurt a little bit for golf, and are there exercises that you could give people to do based on your experience that would be more golf related?
Yeah, as far as competing is was more just weights, and if you're comparing it to golf, you're dealing with more stability, mobility.
Yep.
So we're trying to get more of the lower body stable, the upper body mobile. So exercises like lunges, and then taking a golf club in your hands and then rotating the top of the body so that your body is stable in the bottom. But you're also building strength and balance in the lunge itself, as opposed to working on rotary motion up top. So stuff like that is important. And then cables, you're using a lot of cables as opposed to heavy weights.
Right.
And I think they even had an article, or I was just looking at something where they're saying, I think the golfers are getting too big now. And I think they've over-exaggerated the weight training, where now they're too bulky and not enough fluidity as far as being mobile. And so you need to be more in a functional fitness as opposed to just weights. And if you look at the trend now with the workouts and stuff, they're going back to the functional fitness as opposed to weight training overall, just for people, because people need to be more mobile. People are sitting, people are in their chairs, they're in computers, they're on their phones, their necks are all screwed up, and the same with the golfers are the same. So,
sorry, go ahead. Well, what I was going to say is the reason why I said that is because I know that you have been, and I know you still are in many respects, but you were very involved in weight training in that, and as you just eloquently put, that a lot of the players they're starting to see now that have maybe done too much weight training is not necessarily the best thing for their golf game. And that doesn't mean that you can't do some weight training and find a happy balance. But I think you're right. I think they're starting to see now that some of, especially these young players that have gotten out there and really, hitting the trailers, the fitness trailers, and that hard and heavy, that some of them might be overdoing a little bit and not really focusing on the key. And I think there's obviously different exercises that pertain to the golf swing that are more golf related than fitness related. I mean, they're both certainly going to help you fitness-wise, right? Mm-hmm. So, and then I'm going to bring Tim back in as well, because Tim, I don't want to leave you out in the tumbleweeds there, but I want to just give Michele just a few moments here extra if I can. But Michele, just maybe talk about some other things that, or maybe misconceptions is maybe a better way to put it, that a lot of people have. As I tried to explain in the beginning, a lot of people go to the gym and think that they're doing something that's going to help them down the road with their golf game, but maybe it's counterintuitive or counterproductive. So what would you suggest that the average, man or woman out there, if they're going to go and belong to a fitness club or something like that, what should they do if they want to help their golf game, and what should they try to stay away from that's really not going to give them any benefit on the golf course?
Well, first of all, is like you were saying, is the specific golf. There's specific golf exercises that correlate to fitness and specifically to golf, which does both. And I think, if someone is educated in TPI or any of
right.
that has a little bit of golf background, can help with that. That's number one. But overall, general is more or less working on the core, which is, I think, a lot of your, as we call it, the engine of the swing, is probably a big key as far as holding the whole rotational trunk rotation and core strength, but it's also going to support your back, which is the number one injury in golf.
Right.
So a lot of planks for your abs. A lot of people think crunches, that's a myth. Crunches do not strengthen your stomach. They actually hurt your back. So doing a plank or bridges would be much better and much more beneficial in building your core and rotational than a crunch.
Right.
So and then basically your I like balance and visualization, so you're dealing with the mental and the focus as well, so that you're teaching them not only balance but also how to focus and create more of target oriented as opposed to thinking so much on their swing mechanics.
Right.
So balancing anything to do with balance is great too. I think that's huge. And posture is really big too in the setup. So if you're dealing with, like in yoga, we do cat-cow poses, which is the spine, and a lot of the yoga is opening up the spine and lengthening the spine. And that's what the golfer needs, because your spine compresses as you're swinging.
Yeah.
And so if you're not lengthening, then that's where your injuries start to occur. So, a lot of that.
Well, and also too, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of people, especially in today's environment, a lot of people are maybe working at a desk, whether it be in a cubicle or in an office. And, that's obviously long-term is not good for your spine either. So there's a lot of great exercise and things out there for lengthening and getting it back into, its proper position. Tim and I have been talking about here tonight, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, what I really wanted to focus on here for the first Coach's Corner segment to start the year off was really on the physical side of the game. So it worked out great, Michele, that you were going to be joining us. But also, Tim and I have been talking out here for the last little while about how our thoughts and feelings and emotions affect both on and off the golf course. And we've been talking about different aspects, both mentally and physically, but particularly how the emotions can affect things setting up. So, Tim, I want to bring you back in here real quick, because we were sort of on a thought process here. We talked about the sort of the pre-shot routine and that sort of thing, what they tell about. So let's flip it over now and let's get back to that formula here, and let's talk about the post shot. So we've hit our shot now. What are we telling ourselves at this point, or what should we be telling ourselves?
Well, what I try to do when I work with a student is I try to figure out if there are what I call energy leaks. Is it in the pre-shot? Is it during the swing itself? Is that where the emotional breakdown is at, or the distraction's at, or is it in the post-shot? Now, the pre-shot would be that they step into a shot and they're nervous, or they're scared, or they're angry, or whatever it might be. Well, that's the area we would focus on first to get the emotions stable. I have a lot of my tour players and mini tour players who actually leak most of the energy during the swing itself. And they tend to be the more mechanical players, that something doesn't feel right, say, at the top or during the transition or at impact or whatever. And so that might be the place where they kind of emotionally get distracted or freak out. And then we've got the third group, which is post-shot routine. Those are the ones who tend to be pretty volatile, and they have a hard time just accepting the shot for what it is. So in the work that I do, it's really it's identifying what I call the energy leak area. And they're really all interrelated. I mean, if you get mad enough after enough missed golf shots, well, it's going to be hard to get into the proper space in the pre-shot routine. If you're in a bad mood, you're going to be more susceptible during the swing itself to finding faults and criticizing yourself. And so they're all interrelated, but everybody primarily has that one area that I work to identify, and that's where we do the emotional reshifting process. So ideally what I like to say is that a player has just really, really high expectations and eagerness that something great is about to happen, and then they have total acceptance of whatever is, because you hit the ball and it's too late. Let's get into that good space, go find it, hit it again.
Yeah, and that really brings back to the point that we talked about a little while ago where, especially with some of the higher handicappers, where they'll get in a situation, they'll hit maybe a bad shot or two, and it's like dead weight. They're dragging it with them into their round as they continue on, and they're not rechanneling their efforts and learning from that experience and continuing on as the pros do. And speaking of navigating, Michele, I want to ask you this as well, because I know that you work with a lot of different students, both male, female, and as well as juniors. Talk about, if you will, maybe a little bit about, and you can use specifics if you want, if you've got somebody in mind that you want to reference. I mean, you don't necessarily have to give their name, but if you're working with a particular student, what are some things that you try to do to help them navigate around the golf course? Because as you know, Michele, as a teaching professional, that one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of amateurs make is they're spending a lot of time, practicing on the range, hitting ball after ball, but they're not really getting out there and getting enough real-time playing experience, even if it's just a few holes. They don't have to necessarily play 18 all the time, but just getting out there and actually putting some of those fundamentals to work in a real-life situation, and not just, sort of raking the golf ball over and hitting one after another on the range. So how do you work, what are you doing specifically with some of the students that you're working with to help them focus and navigate their way through the golf course?
Well, it's a good point, because I was going to bring that up as far as breathing, and that's, again, what we do in yoga. As far as breathing, relieves a lot of tension and lets energy flow. And I guess an example would be, like you said, we do a lot of time with teaching and working on the swing where there's so much more to it than just swinging. And this lady that I've brought in from a 40 handicap is down to a 2 handicap now, and it's been about we're in our 14th year now, and she's finally made it to the club championship and has won 3 times. So it's been a nice, just to see the building of from beginning to end. But now we're in that point where you're saying it's in her head, and it's totally mental now. And every time that she would get to the finals, she would fall apart, or she would get sick, and I'm like, I just trying to figure it out. So what I did to win her first competition was I'm just going to give her the breathing exercises, which is part of the pre-shot routine that Tim was discussing, and to incorporate behind the ball, taking a breath, inhaling, exhaling. You step in, you set up to the ball, inhale, exhale, and then you would go. And it's kind of like the analogy to the tennis player when they're grunting and they're, people are like, why are they grunting? But that's all exhale and exhale. And that's just releasing a lot of the tension so that basically there's more flow and more fluidity to the swing. So you get rid of the nerves and there's more blood flow. And then in turn that creates a better focus and visualization because the breathing's all incorporated to that body and mind connection. And so then basically your swing can come out and play because you're out of your own way basically.
Right.
And you're just allowing things to flow at that point. And then, focusing more on the target and less on the golf swing, focusing more on the positive. If they're coming up to, a hole with water on it, you're focusing and elevating your eyes up above, maybe the flagstick. Or you're aware of the water, but you're not focusing on the water. So your end result becomes the target rather than the last word in your head is the water. So kind of working a lot of that mentally into their game.
And one of the things too that Tim and I had talked about earlier, and I had mentioned that one of the big problems that a lot of amateurs have is they will tend to sort of get ahead of themselves. Now, I'll give you an example. I discussed what I call the 4 factors of golf, and that is position, approach, recovery, and scoring. And a lot of amateur golfers, particularly, and this kind of sounds like your player here was doing that, is when she would get into a position where maybe she had the lead or what have you, suddenly her mental focus was shifting to the point where now the nerves were getting in and so forth. So how do you encourage, or what do you try to do? I mean, obviously, certainly the breathing can help in that, but are there things that you encourage them to say to themselves, if you will? And Tim and I want you to chime in here as well in a moment. When a player gets in that, obviously, they're going to start off with the breathing to kind of calm the nerves down that, but are there sort of mental cues that you try to encourage them to sort of say to themselves, if you will, when they find themselves in that position?
Yes, a lot of it, is target. It's maybe 1 or 2 words, no more than that. I have people that sing songs during the rounds that really help them, like verses and things that don't even pertain to golf. And, that's helped a lot. Just, like again, the same lady, she has her mantra, swing, set, go. And this is kind of a thing that she plays on the range, and she just has that going as she's practicing. And then as she goes onto the course, it's already into her head. Just that little saying that she plays. But I think it has to come with them as far as a creative word or sense, even feel. I always try to have people feel the golf swing as opposed to thinking of any part of the mechanics of it. Some people may feel within, as far as their tempo or a relaxation feel. As we do in yoga, and when I do the last part of it, the quartz pose, is the relaxation of everything that you've done throughout the class, and then at the end you just relax. And a lot of, if you can get people to get into that relaxed state, and it's more of a meditational state, and to train the mind more of, it's more of just quieting the mind with no thoughts. I know that's hard to say, but a lot of that comes through meditation, and you have to work on it, and you definitely have to practice. You can't just tell someone, okay, think this, think that. So a lot of the meditation and the breathing that I do through the yoga classes helps them visualize, but then when they take it on the course, they can get to that same sensation that they were when they were just laying there for 5 minutes.
Right. And Tim, let me ask you,
it's a different way to look at it. I know it's
right. No, and you're exactly right, and well said, by the way. You're exactly right. Is you have to find something. It's very interesting. Cindy Miller, of course, who I know she's an LPGA professional. She's played not only on the LPGA Tour but the Legends Tour, and she's obviously a phenomenal teacher as well up in the northeastern part. Mm-hmm. But her and I were talking on my other program, the Women of Golf, one day. I think might have been last year. I'm not sure, but and we had a guest on, and we were talking about this very thing about keeping focused and all this kind of thing, and there was an interesting story that came out in the conversation about Annika Sorenstam. And Tim, this is what I want you to sort of expand on a little bit. But one of the problems that Annika said that she had was, particularly when she was playing in a major, because it was a little bit more amped up than some of the average tournaments that she played in, because that was where her focus was on the majors, is that she didn't know how to shut herself off. In other words, what would happen is, it was shot, and in between the shots, she didn't know what to do with herself, so her mind would just keep racing, and not allowing herself to sort of calm down. So, Tim, I know that you've had this experience working with a lot of professional golfers, whether it be junior or more seasoned players. What do you do in a case like that, where you get a player that's so focused on what they're doing that they're not sort of shutting down and letting for lack of a better word, smelling the flowers in between, shot A and shot B? How do you handle a player like that?
Yeah, well, I think Michele brought up a great point, and I think that the breath is obviously the greatest tool we've got is a focusing tool. One of the things that I work with my players very, very diligently on, even the tour players, is, again, you can't be focused on your breathing and a potential problem in the same moment. It's one or the other, but it's not both. And so really the best focusing tool we've got out there is the breath. You can't be focusing on the breath if you're truly focused on it, and it's gonna keep you in that calm space. But the one thing that I would like to add, and this is, I think, the missing component a lot of times in the mind game, is we make the breath seem like it's the magic pill or the magic tool. Well, if you get too strong of a momentum of negative energy going, and we can probably all attest to this, think of when you've really been in a strong argument with somebody. Well, you've let the emotion go way, way, way too far, and in those moments, even with the breath, it's going to take you a while to get settled down. So I get asked the question a lot, so how do you deal with frustration? And the best answer I've got, it's never very satisfying to anybody, but it's that you don't get frustrated to begin with. You keep the emotions so strong and stable from the get-go that it's like those thoughts don't even appear. Because, again, remember, and this is another missed point very often, is that the thoughts that we notice, what I like to call thought impulses, they really only come to us as a byproduct of the emotional frame of mind that we're in. So when we're in that state of, think, for example, of when we're in the zone, and as better athletes, we've all been in the zone. Well, those thoughts don't even creep into our field of awareness when we're in the zone because we're in that emotional space. And so really, people will say, well, what's the best way to deal with your thoughts? And it's like, it's almost like, let's get a little more proactive with this work before we even get out there. And one of the big traps that I see, too, is when people practice, for example, they're not really practicing the mind game because they're out there on the practice range. There's not a lot of nervousness. They're not really that upset. They can accept a lot easier when shots don't go crazy, but they're not developing skills that they need to borrow upon once they get onto the course. Now they get on the course, and there's more perceived pressure. There's more bogus stories going on or whatever, and because they've never practiced breathing techniques, they don't have anything to rely upon. So the brain body starts scanning for something to save them, and it's like there's nothing available in that moment that's going to help them much. So this is why, things like Michele was talking about, like yoga and breathing and certainly the emotional mastery stuff that I talk about, these are so critical to amateur golfers and really even to tour professionals, that a lot of them aren't practicing enough, that I just think is really going to take the game to higher levels. Even yoga is just becoming more mainstream, and it's very exciting to me to see these mind-body practices that I think are just going to, I think we're seeing kind of a new breed coming out that is more emotionally fit and mentally fit and in some ways yoga fit and whatever. And it's going to be fun to watch in the next 10 years. I think we're going to see, almost a different kind of evolution in the sports that we didn't have access to before because of these new processes and new practices. So I find it very exciting as we do that.
Well, and again, great points. The other thing too is, and you hear, I've listened to Arnold Palmer and Jack and many of the other veterans of the game, talk about that it really has become a different game. And, even though with all of the advancements of technology and between the golf club and the golf ball and all the different mechanisms out there to build you the perfect swing, it's really, and I've heard a number of people actually use this analogy, but really the most important club in the bag is the one between the ears. And, you can have all of the...
I'm fond of saying, and then I'm going to be quiet because Michele hasn't had much time here, but you could take 100 golfers. You could take 100 golfers of identical, and of course this is a little theoretical, but of identical size, identical education, give them identical diets, give them identical workouts. identical swings, near identical swings, you would have 2 or 3 that would succeed and 97 that would not. The one factor we still can't measure is belief, and until we tap into higher states of belief, that to me is the missing component that we just kind of haven't got our heads in, and it's the one component we're never going to be able to measure. You can measure lines, you can measure ball flight, you can measure spin rates, you can measure swings, you can measure flexibility. I'm not knocking any of those, by the way. I think it's a really, really fun game, and the new equipment is just fabulous, and it's fun to play with the new drivers. I love it, and the new putters. But the one factor still that stands out to me for the making of a champion is belief. And until we get into that, we're just kind of, in some ways, I feel like not doing my students a favor. So that's what I really work with them on, is how do I believe? How do I believe before I see the proof? And that's where the real work that I teach.
Yeah, exactly. You're 100% right. Michele, we're getting towards the end here, so I want to give both of you an opportunity. I'm going to let you have a few extra moments here, if you will, and just talk about some of the things that as golfers are coming out of the woodwork, if you will, especially those that have been up in maybe some of the cooler climates. I mean, we haven't really had a hard winter, as I said to Tim in the beginning of the program, but there were some storms that rolled in here and there up and around Buffalo and New Jersey and things like that. So, some of the golfers are sort of dusting off their winter garb and they're getting ready to come out and play. If you were sort of to whip together a magic list of things, a checklist, if you will, what would that be for those that want to get out there and get rolling and playing some good golf? What would you recommend that they do to start their season off right?
Oh, boy.
Nothing like putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I was going to say, first of all, don't go out and start hitting drivers and, trying to hit it to the fence, and getting that new driver and then getting hurt right off the bat. So I think starting slow, I always believe in just starting with the short game and working back up to the full swing and, just, again, going to your local professional and working with, a series of lessons, and again, taking it easy, not trying to go full force just because you want to get out of the house.
Right.
But, I agree with Tim on a lot of his, with the mental side, and I believe so much in what he's saying as far as the mental side. And I can remember when I was working with McLean and Tiger Woods was winning, and I think it was 2000, and they were saying, there's 4 parts to the game, and there's short game, full swing, management, and mental. And the guys like Tiger has all 4, and there's a lot that are lacking that one. And a lot of that one becomes that mental and the belief and and who you are. And so I think a lot of it, that's why a lot of the yoga in the meditational state is key to being in that calm space, like Tim was saying. You have to be there before you even step out on the tee, and it has to be prepared. So prepare yourself before you play golf.
Right.
It's so instead of just playing golf and not working on the things you need to work on.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, as I mentioned earlier, and because I know that you're certified not just from the teaching standpoint of the golf swing and things like that, but you're also yoga certified and also fitness certified as well. So you've got a lot of great components. And one of the things that I suggested at the beginning, and I'm sure you would concur, Michele, is that I think that in today's game, if you really want to be, and it doesn't matter whether you're competitive, on a tour, or whether you're somebody that's maybe competitive in your own foursome, the physical component is huge as well. Obviously the mental is a big component, your emotions and so forth. But with so many opportunities out there to get yourself into good shape, but relating to the golf swing, what I suggest is that with so many great certified fitness professionals out there, both golf instructors and certified fitness instructors, or a combination of both, that's also, I think, something that needs to be addressed very early in the season to avoid injury in that, because as you said, you want to start off slow, but you want to make sure that you're working on the right muscles and getting a routine down so that when you do get out there sort of hot and heavy in full season, you're not coming in there with a bunch of injuries because you haven't really prepared yourself properly. So that's something too, I would imagine, that you try to do with a lot of your students, is get them sort of physically prepared to handle some of the stresses and that, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
and whether that's whether it's yoga or other combinations.
Correct. Yeah, anything to prepare the body, because that's the most important piece of equipment you have. And if the body's not prepared, then you're risking for injuries, and then you're out the rest of the season. So definitely that has to be, and hopefully people do have some winter stuff that they are working on, because there's preseason and off-season and what you're working on as far as with your golf game.
But you know as well. Yeah, you know as well as I do, Michele, that there's certainly more than a handful of them that have been sitting in the, as we call the couch potatoes, and they come out to their local professional and say, okay, fix me for the season. I want to be shooting, whatever under par or not under par, but
True.
I want my handicap to drop 10 strokes from last year, and they're looking for this magic formula which just doesn't exist, and you and I know that,
No.
and as well as Tim. So. Some great thoughts there as well. Tim, what about yourself? Obviously, again, you're sort of approaching it from a different angle, if you will, but again, you want to prepare. So what are some things that you try to get your groups that you're working with focused on at the early part of the season? Because not everybody has the advantage of being, in Florida where we are. There's other areas that maybe they don't get a chance to have the full benefits that we do. So what do you try to do to get them started off right?
This is going to sound so simplistic maybe, but the one thing I would say is before every shot, just get in a good mood, and really just get in a good mood, put a smile on your face, and trust that, some good things can happen, because the alternative is getting into a bad mood, and it just stresses up the body. So if you want the body to function, if you want the swing to work, just get into a good mood and really begin to remind yourself before every shot, pre-shot routine, this is how I want it. This is how I want to emotionally feel right now. It might be optimistic, it might be calm, it might be confident, it might be whatever, but really begin to add that emotional component into the pre-shot routine, and then don't leak the energy after the shot. Just accept it for what it is, and move on to the next one with, again, a sense of optimism or whatever. So that really is that's kind of the key, is just, not, and obviously much easier said than done, because we golfers have a very difficult time accepting mistakes, and even if it throws us off in the weeds, just get into a good mood, and then everything really to your talent level falls into place. Yeah.
Something interesting about positive energy, and I want to give really kudos to you, Michele, because obviously, of course, we're all connected on social media, Facebook, and what have you. But I got to give kudos to Michele, because almost on a daily basis, and I don't know if this is part of something that you work through, channeling through yoga, or if just your natural spirit. But Michele always posts, literally on a daily basis, multiple times a day on Facebook. There's all this other, and I'm being polite here, but garbage going on Facebook, and we all know what it is. Michele always posts these positive little messages and paragraphs of everything from faith to whatever it happens to be, but it's always a positive energy. Very quickly, Michele, explain why you do that, what the importance of that, and the benefits of doing that, and why it's important to you to go that route.
Well, first of all, I'm a very positive person. I've always been that way. Everything has always been bright. There's always another angle. If something's not right, there's always something positive. So I've always tried to express that and try to bring that into my students all the time, to try to see there is no negative. Let's just focus on the positive. There's nothing, and you're not doing this wrong. What are we doing right? So I've never point out this is wrong, you're doing this wrong. It's always, okay, what can we do right, and
Right.
This is what we're going to work on today. There's no. So I think just me in my spirit, and me as a person, has always been an inspiration to help anybody and everybody that I can. And for me, the gratification is watching people succeed and people be happy. And I know everybody's not happy, and I think I've had a challenge in the Northeast, coming from California. So that has been a big challenge for me, but I think the challenge has been really rewarding to change a lot of negativity into positive. And it's still a challenge with my students, but it's definitely has rubbed off not only in their game but in their life as well, which has been,
Well, and the reason why I wanted to mention that, Michele, is because it really goes to not only what you were talking about, but what Tim and I were talking about a little bit earlier in the program, is really, what we focus on, what baggage, if you will, you're bringing into your daily lives. And if it's constantly, negative and overly stressful, that's going to creep into your golf game as well when you get out in the golf course. If you've had a bad day at work, or maybe a fight with your spouse and things like that, and obviously those things in the real world, they can happen, they do happen, but it's how we channel that energy. And the reason why I wanted to talk about that is because, gosh, to be honest, I get tired when I go on these different social media sites and I see, in some of the golf forums, that it's always talking about mechanics, it's always talking about this approach, it's always talking about the same old things, and there's really very little discussion talking about the emotional side. And I think that, whether you're a 25 handicapper or a scratch golfer, emotions can affect how you play in the golf course. And I think if people would just change their attitude, and again, you can't be popping a happy pill and be walking around 24/7. It just doesn't happen. You're going to have your down times, but it's how we handle those moments that is going to make or break our day, and it's how we choose to receive it. And again, as Tim, as you put, channel it into a positive and learn from that maybe that negative experience and turn it into a positive. And Michele, that's why I wanted to mention that, because you do a great job. And I don't get a chance to like every single one of them, but I know you've noticed I've liked quite a few of them.
See, that's good. Well, I'm glad you like them. That's why you do it.
So keep them coming.
Hopefully.
Very quickly, Michele, for those that want to reach out to you, where are you now, and how can they go about getting in touch with you if they want to get some help with their game?
I will be at Alpine Country Club in New Jersey, Demarest, and April 15th I'll be back.
Okay.
So I'll be there until October. So I do take non-members. It is members, but I do teach non-members. So, and then my email is Michele with one L, Michele @alpinecc.org.
Perfect.
So I'd be happy to work with anybody that wants to work with the physical side and yoga, fitness, anybody that's into conditioning for their game and obviously their game as well. So
perfect. Yeah. And for some good positive energy, they definitely want to connect with you. That's right. Great job.
Yes.
Tim, you as well. Any final thoughts, and then let the folks know how they can reach out to you as well.
Yeah, best way to reach me, I'm at Club Med Academies now in Port St. Lucie, Florida, and I've got events going on there every week. Actually expanding in some parenting classes now, which is pretty exciting and very challenging. I do some stuff for businesses and of course golfers. Started programs now on the yips. Being a huge, emotional topic, and so, but a lot of great programs going on there. Best way to reach me is through my website, which is myspiritofgolf.com, or just contact me at tim@myspiritofgolf.com. And I'm there a lot, but I also travel the country to some of the private clubs and do clinics for members there, and so I get around and would love to go to any course and and just do a clinic. They're fabulous, and we have a lot of fun, it's been very rewarding to be able to even help the golfer who's a 30-40 handicapper. You'd be amazed at and I'm sure Michele can attest to this, that when we just get them in that happier, better space, their progress just improves at whatever level they're at. They don't have to. I think that maybe that's the biggest misconception, is that the mind game is limited to really good players, and nothing could be further from the truth. Yeah, it really is something that everybody could benefit from.
Yes,
right,
definitely.
exactly. Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is the higher handicap golfers focus too much on the numbers. They're too concerned about the score. They're too concerned about getting that handicap down and not really focusing on things. I look at things this way: is again, going to, and I hate to date myself here, coming up with these old sayings, but for every action there's a reaction, and I think that if people would focus on the key areas that they need to focus on, not just on the physical parts of the game, but on the emotional and some of the things that we talked about tonight, the numbers will take care of themselves over time, much quicker than if you're constantly worrying, well, I want to get down to a 10, I'm a 20 right now, what do I got to do, and how can I change this? And they get so caught up in the number and of their handicap, and they get so caught up on the mechanical side that they forget to, as I said, what's going on between the ears and what's coming out of their mouth a lot of times dictates how they're going to play as well. So great job, guys, and Tim, thank you as always for coming on and sharing your thoughts as well, and Michele, thank you for joining us here. I appreciate you guys giving of your time. I know it's not always easy. We got lots of things to do during the day and keeps busy, and it's not always sometimes convenient to have to come on and chat for an hour or so, but I appreciate you giving of your time, and I know that the audience enjoys it, and that's why I keep bringing this panel discussion back. So to both of you, much continued success. I look forward to you coming back on future panels and guest appearances, and keep up the great work, and thank you very much sincerely for all that you guys do.
Thanks.
Yes,
great
thank
stuff
you very much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Yep.
Thanks.
All right, have a great
Bye-bye.
night. All right, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, that was my two special guests. I was glad that Michele was able to join us here a little bit later on. I think there was a misunderstanding on my part with the time difference. I thought she was up in New Jersey right now and on Eastern time, but I wasn't aware that she was down in California. So I think there might have been a miscommunication on my part. So that's why she joined us a little bit later. But I'm glad she did. She had some great points to make. As I tried to elaborate through the program here, one of the reasons why I really like this Coach's Corner panel discussion is, as much as I'm sure you're all aware from listening to the show, I love to talk, but I also want you guys to get some other viewpoints besides just mine. So as much as I want you to come and listen to me, I want you to listen to my guests and special guests and things like that as we progress through the year. I'm going to do a lot of discussions like this throughout the year. And having great guests. I'm going to try to have them very topic specific to some of the guests that I'm coming on. Like, for instance, Michele, again, is very certainly good on the emotional side, but also obviously very good on the physical side of the game as well. And Tim, of course, specializes in that emotional channeling and things like that. So that's why I was glad to have him on board as well tonight. So again, a very special thank you to Michele Trimarche and Tim Kremer for joining me on the Coach's Corner panel tonight. So this was number one for the season, 2016. It was the first Coach's Corner panel, and we've got many, many more. We're going to have lots of great discussions. We want you to join, though. One of the things that I want to really try to encourage this year, so for those of you listening now to the live broadcast and those that are going to be tuning in later, Coach's Corner, of course, traditionally, I ran a little bit longer tonight just because, as I said, to give Michele some time to come on here since she was a little bit later joining us. But normally it's the first hour of our 2-hour broadcast from 6 to 7 Central is the Coach's Corner panel discussion. Normally I'll have 2 to 3 teacher professionals or coaches, what have you, joining in the panel discussion with me. And one of the things that I'm going to try to do this year as well, as I mentioned it to Tim off the air, is I'm going to also try to get some special guests to join us that specialize in key areas of the golf game and want to give them an opportunity to discuss that area of expertise, and then get the panel to jump in and have some dialogue and discussion. And for those of you that tune in, what I want you to get from these panel discussions are really twofold. Number one, I want you to sort of think outside of the box. I don't want you just to sort of constantly focusing on the numbers, focusing on your score this season. I want you to make 2016 the season where you're going to make change. Instead of just sticking with the status quo that you've been doing for the last, several years, depending on how long you've been playing golf, and just, going out to the range and raking the balls and hitting them and, working a little bit here, working a little bit there, maybe taking a lesson here and there. I want you to really get focused. And some of the different tips and training and advice that we're going to be giving here in the Coach's Corner panel in 2016, like we did here tonight, is really going to start focusing on the sizzle in the steak, not just the steak itself, but we're going to get into some of the meat and potatoes, if you will, of the golf game, and really start talking about some of the key areas that I think people need to focus on if they want to play their best golf. And I mentioned the 4 factors of golf that I feel very strongly about, and I'll quickly read them off again. And again, I'm a little bit later on as we go, I'm going to explain why I'm bringing them up and why I'm sort of repeating myself here about it. But really, I believe there are really key 4 key factors to playing your best golf, and they are position, approach, recovery, and scoring. And I'm going to get into much more detail as we go on and explain the reasons why I'm doing that. But those are things that I want you guys and gals out there to understand. So thank you for joining me. Just a quick special thanks to some of the supporters and sponsors of the show. Mr. Jonathan Laird, of course, from South Coast Golf Guide, great supporter of the show. Go to southcoastgolfguide.com. South Coast Golf Guide is a publication that comes out believe every quarter, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, for every quarter, literally covers the southeastern part of the United States, from Texas right over here to Florida. And in there are some great golf courses that you may want to play if you're coming to visit our area. So go to South Coast Golf Guide, navigate around .com, around the website, and you'll see some great information there. And if you want a copy of the guide, if you're not down here yet, but maybe planning coming down here in the next few months or sometime through the year, you can get a current copy of South Coast Golf Guide, and it's got some great golf courses that maybe you haven't played yet and want to know some information about them and how to get in touch with them and how to book tee times with them, and that all the information, contact information, of course, is in the guide for each of the courses that are featured. And all those states, Alabama, Florida, as mentioned, Mississippi, Louisiana, and of course elsewhere in the Southeast, you can get that information in that guide. So go to southcoastgolfguide.com. My good friend, Mr. Jonathan Laird, will be more than happy to make sure that you get a copy there. You can request it directly from the website as well. Meredith Kirk, who's going to be a guest here in a little over a month's time, go to meredithkirk.com. She's a great teacher professional, LPGA teacher professional, teaches many, many great students out in the Myrtle Beach area, does a lot of great things, and as I've mentioned numerous times, she was the 2014 Mrs. South Carolina winner, and she went on to compete also in the Mrs. USA competition the following year, and did very well there. Didn't win, of course, in the Mrs. USA, but did very well nevertheless. Thank you, Meredith. She's going to be coming on here in about a month and a half time, I believe, to talk some golf with me and fill me in on what's happening in the world of Meredith Kirk, and lots of great stuff there. She's been on the show before, and really great guest. Mr. Nikki and Tiffany Litherland. Nikki, as I've mentioned numerous times, is going to be coming on the show here, and I'm waiting to hear back. We've been trying to coordinate a date here, and I won't get into specifics, but Nikki had been dealing with some things on a personal nature that has prevented him from coming on earlier than he would like. And so we're still trying to hammer out that date, but he's going to be coming on. He's a great golf professional, and his wife, of course, his lovely wife, Tiffany Litherland, are big supporters of the program and always helping to spread the word each and every week. So thank you for all of your continued support. And Nikki, I look forward to having you on the show here real soon. Mr. Bernie Pinder, good friend of mine as well, from Ontic Golf. He's the founder and president of Ontic Golf. Great line of customized putters, which I am the proud owner of one. Thank you, Bernie, for that. Great supporter. Go to onticgolf.com, which is a brand new website they just launched. And actually, I am the developer of that new website. So if you want to check that out and see some of my skills on web design, you can see them there at onticgolf.com. And you can actually purchase right there. There's an online shopping ability store, if you will, that you can purchase some of the great products. But great line of customized putters at onticgolf.com. Mr. Peter Doyle from Doyle Golf Solutions over in Ireland, a great teacher professional and also a great club fitter. He's also a big proponent and great follower of the program, and really helps spread the word over in Europe as well about Golf Talk Live. So I want to thank all of them for all of their continued support, and many, many others. Mr. Barry Goldstein, been on the show a number of times. Barry and his lovely daughter Carly Ray for coming on the show numerous times, and I'm going to have them back here before too long. But I want to take this opportunity finally to thank all of the listeners worldwide for faithfully tuning into Golf Talk Live each week. I truly do, and I mean this sincerely. I have a great deal of pleasure and enjoyment of having a number of highly talented coaches, teaching professionals, and authors and entrepreneurs stop by the show, and it's really through their participation, as you experienced tonight, and their guest appearances that help to make Golf Talk Live a first-class show. So on behalf of, again, my special guests tonight, Michele Trimarche and Tim Kremer, thank you very much, and thank you for all of the listeners. I will see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Central right here on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody and have a great week.